Hello and welcome back to the Why Create podcast. I am your host, David Hay. Today's guest brings us deep into the glittering and often unsettling world of contemporary art. With years spent navigating elite galleries, auction houses, and museums, she's turned that insider knowledge into a gripping debut novel that's already generating serious buzz. Her story pulls back the curtain on a world where beauty, manipulation, and money collide. Introducing Anna Barrington. Thank you so much for joining. This is really exciting.
Of course, yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Just for the people who are listening, can you introduce yourself and what I guess I'm interviewing you about?
Yeah, sure. My name is Anna Barrington. I'm the author of The Spectacle, which is the social thriller that just came out on July 8th. And I guess we will be talking about the book.
Yes, that's exciting. I read the a couple of things about the book. Sounds like a really exciting plot, and I personally am going to be reading it after this later. It looks
Oh,
like a
great.
really good book. I did want to just talk about this. This podcast is more of a it's called Why I Create. So it's basically talking about kind of your influences and reasons why you create, literally. So I just wanted to ask you, could you take me back to the beginning, like what first drew you to the world of art and culture?
Yeah, sure. That's a good question. Um, I guess when I went to college, I went to college in the UK and they had this program. I mean, I guess my degree was in art history, and that was just never something I learned much about growing up in the US. It was never on offer at my high school, and in that degree, we were just like confronted with a lot of different images of of all the most famous art and sculpture in the world and tested like that. And I just sort of started to see it as a whole new way in which you could see the world just through
Mhm.
images, by analyzing images and how you could get so much out of that. Like every single image could just describe a thousand things and a
Mhm.
thousand books. So for some reason, I just really related to that way of seeing, um, and it attracted me.
Mhm. Awesome. Well, I would know that you grew up in Atlanta. So is that correct if I did my research correctly?
Yeah.
Did you? I guess you kind of answered it, but I was wondering, did you always have an interest in the arts, or I guess what you just told me that was the turning point. That was where you kind of decided that's what I want to go on, the path you wanted to go on. It sounds like. So you studied at both St. Andrews and the Courtauld Institute. Is
Yeah.
that correct? Uh, what's one thing that you learned while studying art academically that most you think most people don't realize?
I guess, and people will say this in every creative field, but just how tough it is to succeed in the career.
Mm.
Whether you're coming at it just wanting to work at a museum or a gallery or wanting to be an artist yourself, it's tough. And there aren't a lot of jobs and they pay pretty badly.
I mean, yeah, you're right. You're correct. That's a lot of artists and in any field do talk about that. And myself, I do a lot of creative things, and it's very hard to get any traction. So
Yeah.
it's really neat that actually it was very exciting when Terry reached out to me. It was like, "Oh, I heard your episode. Can you interview Anna?" I was like, "Oh, that would be so cool." So you spent over 5 years working in the New York gallery and auction scene. Um, what are some things that you could say that you learned from that experience?
Well, I guess I was more in London than New York, although my book is set in New York.
Okay.
But I guess I mean it was just a crazy world. I feel like I put everything really sort of exciting about the gallery world into the spectacle.
Okay.
Um, so you can read about it.
We'll leave that for the people to discover in the book. So you said, and I think this is a good way to lead into my other next question. You said that you took a lot of inspiration from those years working in the gallery, and you put a lot of it um, into the spectacle. Is there a specific moment that you're willing to share that that meant a lot that is in the spectacle, or do you want to leave that, I guess, for people to read?
Um, I think maybe just like how larger national politics can sweep people up when they're celebrity artists and become this huge thing. So I sort of comment on that in my book, how like di different movements like Me Too or BLM started sweeping people up, and artists would make work about it, and sometimes they would be tangentially involved in it.
Hmm.
I'm specifically thinking of some male artists who got like exposed during Me Too.
Mhm.
So um, I guess it's things like that remind you of the fact that art is kind of an entertainment business. I mean, it's not completely, but there are some relationships with Hollywood and stuff, and sort of having to manage that from a PR perspective. Um,
Okay.
yeah, just realizing that you're not only selling the paintings or whatever, which are important of these artists, but you're selling sort of their reputations.
Hmm. That's very interesting. So did any experience or training in the art world directly help you as a novelist, like in terms of structure, pacing, and kind of atmosphere?
Yeah, definitely. I think maybe just I feel like what people don't talk enough with writing is like it's really important to learn how to tell a story. And part of that is just done by like talking a lot to people and learning how to tell people stories and
Hmm.
learning how to kind of entertain them. So I think that was part of something I developed in art, just because you're trying to get someone's attention,
Hmm.
you're trying
Hmm.
to make the artist seem amazing and profound.
Yeah.
And you kind
Um,
of have to
oh,
wrap up the story in that.
sorry, could you say that again? I spoke over you, sorry.
No worries. Just like to make an artist seem sexy and cool and profound, you kind of have to tell a little story about them, and that is the most convincing thing.
I didn't think about that before. So, exactly what did you do in the gallery? Because I think
So
what you just mentioned could really help if we understand more about what you did.
yeah, I did a lot of things. I was in comms mostly. So I interviewed artists, I wrote press releases, and I would talk to journalists about what the artists were doing.
Hmm.
Um, that was my job. So I was always trying to create a small, tight story, um, that could be read quickly or told quickly about what the artists were doing or like their life story.
Okay. Um, and then I was curious about why you went from doing that into writing a book. Was this something you've always wanted to do, or was there just some moment that was like, oh, I have all this experience, maybe I could turn it into a story?
I think I was just seeing so many crazy things happen, from, you know, just having a lot of fun in the art world, going to different parties and meeting so many cool artists, um, and then sort of from a distance seeing these legal scandals unfold,
Hmm.
um, with people I sort of distantly knew. And I just thought it would just be a really good subject for a book.
And it turns out that a lot of people are liking it. You're getting reviews from the People magazine. If I'm correct, was it USA Today as well? I think I've heard some stuff from them.
Oh, maybe. I don't know. I need to check.
But it's really cool. I'm very excited for you. Your book is getting a lot of traction.
Thank you so much.
So, you've described artists who bet on themselves as like a big inspiration for you. Um, how did that mindset influence your writing process, if at all?
Um, that's a good question. I think my biggest inspirations are other writers.
Hmm.
Um, and I always kind of wanted to write a book. I thought about it since, I was a little girl, but I just didn't think it was possible. Um, and then artists, I guess, kind of freed me to see that it was possible because I understood that they were just kind of like graduating from school and trying to make it work same as anybody did. And in
Hmm.
a way, their situation was more difficult than mine because as an artist, you kind of need to be in a studio like painting. You can't just do it on the fly as I
Hmm.
could, writing in my notes app, going to
Yeah.
work. Um, so I guess that determination was pretty inspiring, and I met a bunch of artists just in my personal life who I really loved. One is Hayal Pazanti, who's this amazing artist. Um, but I think also the artist kind of inspired me to approach writing differently too, as something more like a collage that I could just keep
Hmm.
piling up over and over and like re-editing and looking at different things. And also just like the importance again of the image. I realized that I could write a whole book and it would be kind of like a movie in which you're mostly just seeing things and you need to analyze what is going on through all these different images, which is interesting to me because I think a lot of writers have lost that image thing recently. I've talked to friends who talk about this and their essays about it. Like people have lost that visual facet sometimes of writing because we're just like so on our phones that we don't even look up and
Hmm.
notice the world.
That's a very good point. I really do see your point and agree with it that a lot of a lot of our ability to kind of learn things from what's around us
Yeah.
is gone.
I mean, we can build it back like super easily. You know,
Hmm.
like I feel like seeing is so important. It's like maybe the most fundamental sense for me. But yeah, it's kind of crazy actually when I will open a novel by sort of a new writer these days, and so often things aren't described in terms of how they look
Hmm.
like a person or a building, and I sort of like that a lot to sort of immerse yourself in the world.
Yeah, and even with like songs, a lot of songs nowadays is written about from a feeling. People write about their feelings, not about it's not a story or explaining something that happened. And then that's why I really like those old songs from like with what's his name? Johnny Cash type of songs because they tell a story, they have a really good message. But a lot of the music nowadays is always the same thing. It's about a breakup or and how they feel about it. It's not really anything unique. So, looking back at at everything, your time in the art world, writing the spectacle, navigating the debut experience, what's one thing that you learned about yourself as a creative person?
I have started writing everything by hand in my second book, which I'm
Hmm.
working on. Um, I read a lot of different interviews with writers who started writing by hand. And I think when you write on the computer, there's a tendency to obsess over each sentence. I can spend like hours on the same sentence. Um, and it's kind of annoying. It's difficult to progress. And
Hmm.
I sort of wanted to, I had some time in writing my second book. I wanted to free myself kind of from the constraints of technology and that obsession and just write it fully by hand. Um, so it was a crazy learning experience. What I realized is even though writing by hand takes a long time and your hand hurts because it's like not used to writing with a pen.
Hmm.
My hand was like cramping up,
I totally get that. Mine too.
feeling like arthritic. Gradually I got muscles in my hand, and once you do that, I realized it was quick. I mean, I wrote a book in like a few months just from
Hmm.
handwriting because you kind of are forced to just go on to the next section.
Okay.
Um, So it was an interesting experience, and I'd recommend that to anyone who has time and is sort of looking to challenge themselves.
Wow, that is very interesting. I've always thought of handwriting as very I write in cursive, so like it flows very easily for me. But I cannot
Yeah,
imagine writing a full book like that. Also,
I have to take breaks, but
y-
your hand muscles just like got a bit stronger.
yeah, I don't know how you would be able to, like, when I'm writing something, I come up with an idea and I have to have it down immediately. Like, it needs to be on paper, or I need to have it written somewhere or else I forget it. And when I'm writing, like, I'm writing a sentence and a new idea comes up for the next part, and I forget it once I get there because I wrote so slowly. Has that happened for you, I guess, in this scenario?
Yeah, I think sometimes it can be helpful though, because it's like it's almost like the slowness of writing by hand, um, like stops your mind from going everywhere,
Hmm.
which I think can be a problem. Like you overwrite is another thing why I was writing by hand because I didn't want to overwrite, which I do, and I think most writers do when they write on the computer or when they, write on anything. You just use more words than is necessary, and sometimes you go in too many places. But if you're like you're your hand doesn't really want to write all those things. You're kind of slow. You kind of have to focus on the best things.
Hmm.
Um, and I feel like your mind shuts out that which you might have cut later on anyway.
So it's kind of like a auto editing sort of thing.
Yeah. At the same time, I feel like whenever you're writing a novel and you get a rush of ideas, you need to make just a few quick notes. Like you can't just go into it and start writing all the paragraphs. But yeah, I know that feeling of like loss of the idea once you've gotten to that
Hmm.
section.
That's really cool. Well, I might have to start doing that. My brother writes poems and things, so I'll suggest that to him.
Oh, that's so sweet. What other kind of creatives do you do interview, David?
Oh yeah, so I this podcast really started off with musicians,
Mhm.
singers. I had a film composer on here one time. Um, because I do a lot of music myself, so that's how I broke into this podcast thing. And then you're my first author, but then I had a photographer that I interviewed and a film director that I interviewed as well. So I'm the what I'm trying to do with this podcast is branch out to all types of creatives, even people who even engineers, like they create things. So that's kind of the goal, is to have any type of person who is doing something creative and try and figure out why and how they got there and things like that. I did want to ask you, what's the most unexpected thing you've experienced you've had so far?
Um, hmm. I think I am so pleasantly surprised to see that the spectacle has been really liked and praised by, most everyone, knock on wood, that who reads it. Because I guess when I wrote it, I sort of thought, oh, some of the things you're saying are a bit provocative, and I could imagine people just hating it. Um,
Mhm.
but they didn't feel that way. And in a way, I feel like I untapped something that other people were feeling about like politics in the US at that moment,
Mhm.
but just weren't saying.
I really like novels and stories who that have a an actual meaning and that people can relate to now, and that was written for people now. And I think that was a great thing that you did. People can It gives people another way of looking at things and sort of an encouragement for the time that we might be going through currently with specifically politics, as you said.
Yeah.
How do you define creative success for yourself today, and has that changed after you started writing?
Um, I think like a lot of people, I sort of have to define success in a pretty practical way for myself.
Hmm.
Um, and a large part of that being sort of financial and like how can I support myself with this work? Um, Even though writing is very precious to me and sometimes that can fray your nerves, just to sort of force the routine on it, but at the same time you have to. Um, so I guess that's how I would define success. But at the same time, there's also like the individual successes of each page and the story, um, which in the end, I guess is more important, if not, it's just as important in a very different way. But that is the task I'm setting myself on a day-to-day basis,
Yeah.
when I'm actually writing. Does this make sense? Is this good? Could I hold this up against, my favorite other writers, and would it be able to stand on its own feet?
I really like that. I guess the last thing is there for the people who are listening, where is like the best place they can follow your work or connect with you and even find a copy of the spectacle?
Yeah, so The Spectacle by Anna Barrington is everywhere you get your books. A lot of people are ordering it on Amazon. And then I have a website, annabarrington.com, to learn more about me.
Well, that's it for this week's episode. If this conversation sparked something in you, make sure to check out her debut novel, The Spectacle, and also visit her website, Anna Barrington, to learn more about her work. If you enjoyed this episode, follow the podcast and leave a review. Also, share it with someone who enjoys a good story. And if you're in the mood for some soft, cinematic music, check out my EP, You Are Greater Than Time by David Hay. It's available wherever you stream music. And if you're listening to the podcast on Spotify, you will see it linked down in the description. As always, thank you for being here, and I cannot wait for you guys to hear the next one.